When renowned pianist Pierce Whitmore playfully challenged unassuming Hadley to tickle the ivories, he anticipated her embarrassment. What unfolded next left everyone in the grand auditorium utterly astonished. Occasionally, the most remarkable talents are concealed beneath the most commonplace exteriors, and a single instant can alter everything irrevocably. The opulent chandeliers bathed the gleaming marble floors of the illustrious concert hall in a golden glow. Crystal goblets gently clinked as elegantly dressed patrons mingled before the night's showcase. This wasn't merely a venue. It was a hallowed space where musical icons were forged and legacies were crafted. Pierce Whitmore, adjusting his satin bow tie, his silver hair impeccably groomed, exuded authority at 52, revered wherever classical music held sway. Tonight's performance promised another victory, another round of applause to add to his illustrious repertoire. The evening's program highlighted Chopin's most formidable compositions, mere trifles for a virtuoso of his stature. "Mr. Whitmore, all is set for your recital," a quiet voice murmured behind him. He turned to find a young woman in plain work attire, a cream sweater and modest gray skirt, her blonde hair neatly tied back in a simple ponytail. Her name tag read, Hadley. A staff member, likely in her early 30s, with hands roughened by honest labor. "My thanks," Pierce responded curtly, barely sparing her a glance. Surrounded by devotees, patrons, and fellow artists, he was used to such adoration. To him, staff like Hadley were merely part of the scenery. Hadley moved discreetly among the guests, refilling water glasses and handing out programs. For 3 years, she'd toiled at the concert hall, arriving at dawn to polish the grand piano, dust the seats, and ready the space for performances that whisked listeners to ethereal realms. She cherished these nights, though she remained unseen. The music that resonated within these walls touched her spirit in ways she couldn't articulate. In quiet moments, when the hall stood empty, she'd graze the piano keys, dreaming of what it might be like to weave such beauty. Pierce caught sight of her again as she meticulously buffed a smudge from the piano's surface, her touch tender, almost worshipful, as if the instrument were holy. How droll, he thought. Did she truly believe she grasped the intricacies of his craft? "Take care," he said with a patronizing grin. "That piano's worth more than most people's homes." Startled, Hadley looked up. "Yes, sir, I understand its value." "I'm sure you do," Pierce chuckled, turning back to his admirers. As the audience settled into their seats, a hum of anticipation filled the air. Pierce's recitals were the stuff of legend, flawless in technique, profound in emotion, and tonight promised to be exceptional. Yet, as Hadley stood at the hall's rear, neither she nor Pierce could foresee how the evening would unravel. Sometimes, destiny weaves plans far grander than our boldest dreams, and tonight, it was poised to impart a lesson no one would forget. The lights dimmed, and Pierce strode confidently to the stage. His fingers glided over the keys with a master's precision. Chopin's Ballade No. 1 pouring forth like molten gold, each note meticulously placed, each phrase shaped by decades of disciplined artistry. The audience sat spellbound, carried away by his consummate skill. From her spot near the back, Hadley closed her eyes, letting the music envelop her. She knew this piece intimately. Every swell, every tender passage, every resounding climax. In her mind's eye, she saw the narrative the music spun: love, loss, victory, and heartache, all intertwined in Chopin's brilliance. Her fingers twitched instinctively, mirroring Pierce's performance. She'd studied this ballade countless times, poring over every recording she could borrow from the library. Music had been her refuge, her haven, for as long as she could remember. "Simply breathtaking, isn't it?" whispered Mrs. Henderson, a prominent donor, to her companion. "No one interprets Chopin like Pierce." The ballade concluded to a roar of applause, and Pierce rose, bowing with elegance, reveling in the adulation. This was his domain. The spotlight, the reverence, the knowledge that he possessed a rare gift others could only admire from a distance. For my next selection, Pierce declared, his voice resonating through the hall, I'll perform Chopin's Etude, Opus 10, No. 4, a piece notorious for its technical demands. Hadley's breath hitched. She knew this etude inside out. Its rapid, fire passages, its fiery emotion, its reputation for daunting even seasoned pianists. She'd fantasized about playing it, though she'd never dared try it on a real piano. Pierce's rendition was impeccable, his hands darting across the keys with effortless grace. The audience hung on every note, captivated. But as he played, Pierce noticed something that irked him. Hadley, still standing at the back, her face betraying an expression he deemed audacious. She seemed to connect with the music, as if she belonged in this world of refinement and artistry. How absurd! What could a woman like her know of the years of training, the sacrifices, the sheer genius required to master such works? Her presence, presuming to appreciate something so far beyond her station, felt almost offensive. The etude ended to another standing ovation, and as Pierce soaked in the applause, his gaze found Hadley again. A mischievous idea took shape, a way to reaffirm the natural hierarchy, to remind everyone who belonged in this elite world and who didn't. As the clapping subsided, Pierce lingered at the piano, a sly smile curling his lips. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his tone laced with theatrical flair, "I see we have a particularly attentive guest at the back, deeply touched by tonight's music." All eyes turned to Hadley, who felt the weight of their stares, her face flushing scarlet as she became the focal point. "You there," Pierce continued, pointing directly at her. "The young lady in the gray skirt. You seem quite engrossed. Tell me, do you play the piano?" The question hung like a snare, poised to snap shut. Hadley's heart pounded, the audience's curious gazes and the shift from reverence to amused anticipation palpable. "A bit," she murmured, her voice barely reaching the front. Pierce's smile widened. "A bit. How humble. Surely someone so captivated by Chopin wouldn't mind sharing a little something for our esteemed guests." A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the crowd. They sensed the game. A virtuoso about to put an interloper in her place, cruel yet captivating. "Oh, I couldn't," Hadley stammered, stepping back. "I'm just staff, I need to—" "Nonsense." Pierce cut in, gesturing grandly toward the piano. "Music is universal, is it not? You wouldn't want to disappoint our generous patrons who keep this venue alive." The trap was airtight. Refusal would seem ungrateful. Acceptance would lead to certain mortification. Pierce relished the moment, his control absolute. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, intrigued, while some guests whispered, some uncomfortable with Pierce's blatant setup, others eager for the spectacle. "Come now," Pierce urged, his tone dripping with mock encouragement. "What's the worst that could happen? You've been listening so intently. Perhaps you've picked up a trick or two." More laughter, though some shifted uneasily, sensing the malice beneath Pierce's polished demeanor. Hadley stood rooted, her mind racing. Her modest apartment, her meager wages, her place in the world's order. She recalled her father's voice, "F. Hadley, sometimes life hands you a chance to reveal your true self." Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, her simple shoes clicking on the marble, each step echoing in the now hushed hall, heavy with expectation and Pierce's smug certainty of her failure. "Splendid!" Pierce exclaimed, clapping theatrically. "Our courageous volunteer approaches. What will you attempt? Perhaps Twinkle, Twinkle, or Mary Had a Little Lamb." The audience chuckled at his condescension, Pierce reveling in his role as the masterful showman orchestrating her humiliation. Hadley reached the piano, her trembling hand brushing the polished wood of the concert grand, an instrument played by legends, its keys holding countless stories. Actually, she said, her voice steadying, I was considering Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. The latter ceased instantly. Pierce's smile wavered briefly before snapping back, now with a sharper edge. Chopin's Ballade No. 1? He echoed, disbelief tinging his voice. My dear, that's among the most formidable pieces in the canon, requiring years of rigorous study and technical mastery. I'm aware of what it demands. Hadley replied softly, settling onto the bench, her fingers finding the keys as if they were home. Pierce's laugh was strained. Well, by all means, enlighten us. This should be instructive. The audience held its breath, some braced for Hadley's inevitable stumble, others sensing something different in her calm demeanor and poised hands. Pierce stepped back, arms crossed, ready to savor her missteps. He envisioned her fumbling, the awkward pauses, the moment she'd realized she was out of her depth, allowing him to swoop in with gracious correction. Whenever you're ready, he said with exaggerated politeness. Hadley closed her eyes briefly, her fingers resting lightly on the keys, hearing her father's music in her mind, the same Chopin ballade they'd played together years ago before life changed. She opened her eyes, faced the sea of onlookers, and began. The first notes rang out with pristine clarity, and Pierce's smirk began to dissolve. The opening of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 poured from Hadley's fingers with a precision that sent ripples of shock through the hall. These weren't the hesitant notes of a novice, but the assured strokes of someone who'd lived with this music for years. Pierce's expression shifted from amusement to bewilderment to dawning alarm. This wasn't possible. The technical accuracy, the expressive phrasing, the emotional depth, it was as if a different person had taken his place at the piano. As Hadley transitioned into the ballade's first major theme, her interpretation unveiled layers even Pierce hadn't considered, highlighting subtle voices that cast the melody in fresh hues. The audience sat transfixed, Mrs. Henderson's jaw slightly agape, others leaning forward, no longer witnessing a farce but something miraculous. Hadley navigated the perilous middle section with stunning ease, the rapid passages flowing effortlessly from her hands. Beyond technique, her playing carried a raw, heartfelt sincerity absent from Pierce's polished performance. She wasn't merely playing notes. She was weaving a narrative of yearning and deferred dreams and beauty found in unlikely places. The music opened a window to her soul, revealing depths her plain appearance had masked. Pierce found himself listening, not just waiting for errors, drawn unwillingly into her rendition. How could this be? Who was this woman? As the ballade's climactic section arrived, Hadley attacked it with a fervor that left the audience breathless. Her body moved with the music, every gesture deliberate, every note precise yet alive with spontaneity. The piano seemed to come alive under her touch, as if it had waited all evening for someone who truly spoke its language. In the final section, Hadley's playing took on an almost transcendent quality, Chopin's melancholy becoming deeply personal. Tears streamed down her face, yet her performance remained unshaken, the emotion amplifying its power. The audience sat in absolute silence, some moved to tears by the unexpected beauty unfolding before them. This wasn't just a performance. It was a revelation of the human spirit. Pierce stood motionless, his assumptions about talent, class, and who belonged in such halls crumbling with each flawless phrase. Hadley reached the ballade's final passage, where Chopin distilled a lifetime of emotion into a few measures. Her notes seemed to float like a prayer, transforming the hall into a sacred space beyond mere technique. As the final chord faded, its echo lingered in the profound silence. No one stirred, the quiet so deep that the ticking of the lobby's antique clock could be heard. Then, slowly, Mrs. Henderson stood, her eyes glistening, clapping with the fervor reserved for true artistry. One by one, the audience rose, their ovations swelling to fill the hall. Pierce remained still, staring at Hadley as if seeing her anew, the woman he'd dismissed as mere staff having delivered a performance that rivaled any he'd witnessed. The realization struck him like a blow. He'd been utterly mistaken. Hadley sat at the piano, overwhelmed by the response, never having played for an audience or imagined her music could move others so. Years of practice in her small apartment, hours spent with recordings and scores, had led to this unimaginable moment. That was, Pierce began, then faltered, his usual eloquence gone. He approached the piano slowly, as if nearing something sacred. "How long have you played?" "Since I was 7, Hadley answered quietly, brushing tears from her cheeks. "My father taught me. He was a pianist, but never had a stage like this." Something broke inside Pierce, the armor of privilege and presumption he'd worn for years. "I owe you an apology," he said. "What I did tonight was unforgivable." The audience hushed, sensing the weight of this exchange between two musicians. But the shift wasn't just between them. It rippled through the hall, prompting others to question their own judgments about worth and talent. "You owe me nothing," Hadley replied, rising from the bench. "Music isn't owned. It belongs to anyone who feels it." The Pierce nodded, humbled in a way he'd never known. "Would you consider playing the rest of tonight's program? The audience deserves to hear more." The offer hung in the air, brimming with possibility and redemption. "I couldn't," Hadley protested, but Pierce shook his head. "Please," he said, his voice now genuine. "In 30 years, I've never heard Chopin played with such honesty. This is a gift our audience deserves." Mrs. Henderson called out, "Yes, dear, please play on." That was remarkable. Other voices joined, urging Hadley to continue. The hall's atmosphere, now wholly transformed. What had started as a formal evening had become a profound reminder that talent could bloom in the most unexpected places. Hadley looked at the faces watching her, no longer strangers, but fellow souls united by music's universal language. She thought of her father, who'd always said music was meant to be shared. "Maybe one more piece," she said softly. Pierce stepped back, ceding the stage entirely. This was her moment now. Hadley chose Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece that had soothed her through countless hardships. As she played, the hall filled with a gentler, more intimate magic, like a lullaby woven with equal parts sorrow and hope. In the audience, reflections stirred. Mrs. Henderson thought of the housekeeper she barely noticed, wondering what hidden gifts she might hold. A businessman recalled his own forsaken musical dreams. A socialite questioned why she'd never looked beyond status to see true value. Pierce listened with growing awe and something deeper. True admiration. Hadley wasn't just skilled. She was an artist in the purest sense, reminding him why he'd first loved music, before fame clouded his passion. As the nocturne ended, Pierce made a life-altering decision. When the final note faded and the audience erupted in another ovation, he stepped forward, taking Hadley's hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, his voice now humble, "tonight, you've witnessed something extraordinary. The rise of a true artist. Hadley has shown us that music transcends status or prestige. It's about the courage to share your heart." The applause became a celebration, not just appreciation. 6 months later, Hadley crossed the same marble floors, but now her name graced the program in elegant lettering, F. Hadley Morrison. Piano. Posters outside heralded her debut recital, backed by a scholarship fund Pierce had created for undiscovered talent. Mrs. Henderson approached, beaming. "My dear, to think you were polishing our glasses just 6 months ago!" "I'm still me," Hadley said with a smile. "Just with a grander piano now." Pierce appeared, no longer the haughty performer of that fateful night, his encounter with Hadley having profoundly changed him. He'd founded a program to seek out overlooked talent in unexpected places, and tonight, He'd serve as her page turner, a symbolic reversal. Nervous? He asked. Terrified? Hadley admitted, but grateful. If you hadn't pushed me that night. If I hadn't been a fool, you mean? Pierce corrected. My arrogance nearly ruined something beautiful. I'm still learning. The hall was packed, word having spread of the staff member who'd stunned an audience with her gift. But the crowd wasn't here for a spectacle. They sought the raw emotion that had moved them months ago. As Hadley took her place at the piano, she reflected on her journey. Her father's death had cut short her musical training, forcing her into whatever work she could find. For years, she'd thought that part of her life was gone, but dreams, she'd learned, never truly fade. They wait for the right moment, for someone to believe in them, even if it's yourself. The lights dimmed, and Hadley began with the same Chopin ballade, now played not as a challenge, but as a tribute to second chances and the courage to be seen. In the audience, Pierce listened, tears in his eyes. He'd spent his career chasing perfection, but Hadley had shown him that music's true power lay in connecting hearts. She'd given him a gift, the chance to rediscover his own humanity. As the final notes rang out and the audience rose, one truth resonated. The most beautiful music often comes from unlikely sources, played by hands that know both struggle and hope. What did you think of Hadley's remarkable journey? Have you ever discovered hidden talent in an unexpected place? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your stories. If this story of second chances and hidden gifts touched you, please subscribe and tap the notification bell. More inspiring tales await. Where are you joining us from today? Let me know below. And remember, you never know who around you might hold an extraordinary gift. Sometimes, all they need is someone to believe in them. Until next time, stay open to life's beautiful surprises.